Hey, how's it going? Today this is episode 5, the finale of my series, Paranoia. And in it, I'm going to cover the show that kind of encapsulates, in a lot of ways, every way we should be paranoid about our government against us. And again, I conceived of doing this with all of the previous episodes before the virus started. And it's just like I always say, it doesn't matter really when I watch these things and come here to talk about them because time, I don't think, is linear. I don't think it goes in a line. I think it's more like, it's just my opinion, but I think it's more like one of my opinions about the nature of it, time. But one of them is that it's like a stack of events rather than a line of things happening. And the reason why I kind of landed on that description is because, sorry, I'm getting messages. It reminds me of a stack of CDs, right? Like you get them and they get out of place, they get knocked over and out of order, perhaps, if you're that kind of person that's into alphabetical and, well, I'm just gonna nutshell it and say somebody anal. And I know it's not the correct terminology for what I'm saying, but I'm not a doctor, so I'm just a layperson kind of laying all over the real meaning and working it to my own ends. But you know what I'm saying. So, in that way, it's like you have all the events, all of each CD is an event. Damn it. Okay. Um, Excuse me for 1 second. Okay, sorry. So you have your stack of CDs, and each CD represents an event, a moment in time, if you will. And so with CDs or albums, which were the vinyl records that you see like DJs using all over the place with the two turntables and the scritchety scratchety. Well, they don't. Some do the scratching, some don't. But sorry, I don't want to digress into all of that business. But albums, CDs, whatever, if you substitute those things for events that happen, it doesn't matter what order you restack them in, they still are going to say the same thing. So I hope that makes sense. I didn't know I mean, I kind of had an idea that a disease was coming because I have psychics that I listen to because they're accurate. And so, yeah, I mean, this was on the horizon. And also, you don't really need to be psychic to know that diseases are going to come around. It's just helpful to have an idea of when that's going to happen, though. But, again, none of that stuff that's happening now was happening when I decided to do this. All right, I got that out of the way. So, Wormwood. Wormwood is actually the story of uh, Frank Olson, and he was a CIA. I believe he was a biologist and or chemist. He was in that area of expertise at any rate, because part of what the story focuses on is the LSD trials that the CIA were trying to work out. So, in order to see if they could, make a Manchurian candidate, basically. And Frank Olson had misgivings about what they were doing. And unfortunately, he voiced that to his colleagues. And so, because they didn't want to be exposed and stopped, I guess, or interfered with or whatever, they decided to dose him basically and they really like messed with his mind. Like obviously this was a sensitive, intelligent person, and they knew the effects of the LSD because I think it wasn't their first time that they were doing it, as they showed in the show. And so they took advantage of this guy's state of mind and also their own like terrible motivations that would lead them to do what they often do with inconvenient people and things that happen, and that is to disappear them, to, erase them from existence. Like the torture records from Iraq, for example, that first they said they didn't exist, and then because the government keeps track of everything, yeah, they did, but they also like lie, for for our sake, for public safety, for all of that baloney they tell us so they can lie to us and do underhanded kind of evil things to us, the unsuspecting public. So they wanted to continue manipulating people, and part of what it displays in the show is, I'm just going to call it the acid trials, like in the, not, I don't know which came first, if it was like Kim Kesey and the Merry Pranksters. It's not that kind of same acid trial, but I think it's an appropriate term because they were using LSD and they were doing like test trials on people, and usually the people didn't know. And one of the things they did was in San Francisco. They probably did it other places, but it's famous that they did it in San Francisco, where they, got hired prostitutes to like bring in certain men. Like maybe they'd have a party and provide these women, or provide the place and send the women in. I know they did it a number of times, so I'm sure they had a number of techniques. What they show in the show, I'm sure there's some truth to it. I don't remember reading about that specifically, but they did have to have some kind of way to observe their experiments. And so they would get people all wasted on LSD, not tell them. They'd be flipping out, not really knowing what the heck was going on with them. It didn't become like the businessman's lunch recreational drug, as they showed in Mad Men, which actually is based on true events as well. Not Mad Men, I mean, but the gentleman's lunch, which, businessman's lunch, I think it was something like that. But it really, I mean, one of the characters in it, the guy, I can't remember his name now, or the actor, and it doesn't even really matter. I'll just say the older guy, ad exec with the white hair, one of the main part of the cast, and he had all kinds of issues, and he would act out. And so someone suggested to him to go ahead and have a businessman's lunch. And then for some people, especially if they know that they're going to be hallucinating and they know that it's going to be part of having taken the drug, if you have that much of a set in your mind, then you're not likely to go nutso cuckoo, And so for some people, like we're discovering now, it helps with alcoholism. It probably helps with anxiety and other psychological disorders, or, it acts as a treatment for psychology. Or, it has, I'm sure, lots of applications. But what they showed in Mad Men, I'm pretty sure was not happening yet. I think it was at the very beginning of like understanding the properties of the LSD. So they did that thing that they do, and it's in the show where they say like, this person is a problem because of this, and it's not necessarily the case. They didn't initially tell the Olsen family that the person that it was pretty well publicized, apparently, according to the show, and the son of Frank Olsen, Eric Olsen, is in the show as himself, as is his family. So it's kind of like a documentary, and it's also mixed with fictional recreations of events that, the people that were there are either dead at this point or are not going to be talking, probably. So it's kind of like they had to go with fiction. But, there's consultants when these kind of matters are covered, government, military things in Hollywood. And so there's somebody there to monitor exactly what is being said, pretty much. And so I'm going to say there's probably a fair level of truth in what was shown. So, what they ended up doing was, because they were so worried that Frank Olson was going to out his colleagues and possibly disrupt the continuance of the program, he became inconvenient. And so when he took LSD with his colleagues, they did tell him, and they said they all got it, and maybe they did. And like I said, they had probably all done it before, except for Frank, I guess. And he did okay. I mean, I think, yeah, you will freak out a little bit. It puts you in a weird place. So it's probably hard. I mean, I did it a bunch of times. I just got used to it. And I think I'm definitely have freaked out a couple of times. It wasn't my freak out. I was freaking out about what was happening around me and really kind of being disturbed by someone else's freak out. But anyway, he seemed to have done okay in the depiction. And then, the weekend was over and everybody went back home. And Eric Olson said, yeah, he came back and he wasn't erratic. He was introspective, he was thoughtful, probably like processing his trip. So he did say, though, he wasn't freaking out. I mean, he did have misgivings, but I'm sure he didn't really discuss them with his child. Eric Olson was a young child at the time, but I'm sure, he spoke to his siblings, he spoke to his mother subsequently and learned things, which you will see if you watch Wormwood, which is on Netflix, by the way. And, he grew up in this world of, you kind of think you know what's going on, you have an idea, but, there's gaslighting happening, because after the weekend, his colleagues were still freaking out that they were going to expose him. So they brought him to a hotel, told him he was there for something else, of course, and then called in the wet work squad of the CIA and basically tossed him out the window. I mean, they tried to say he jumped, but forensics, even at the time, which weren't as intense as they are now, said, like, it doesn't look like he fell. There's like footprints of him and other people, and it looks like a scuffle happened. I mean, they know what a fight after the fact looks like, law enforcement, and God knows they've been seeing them forever. And just like what the glass did and the window dressing and all this stuff, like they knew, like the guy, it wasn't really possible for him to throw himself out the window. Like, I believe they got him out of bed so he wasn't wearing shoes and he was wearing pajamas. And I don't know exactly what happened. Like I said, people that probably do know either are dead or the information, the details have been destroyed, because it was a shitty thing to do. But they of course didn't tell the whole truth to the family. They learned about somebody falling out the window in New York in the newspaper, and it didn't specify who it was, but his family were able to look at that and say, God, that sounds like our dad. That sounds like my husband. Like the whole family was pretty dang sure it was probably their dad, and it was him, because he didn't come back and he was dead. So there was like two stories about what happened and like what they were feeding the family and what they were feeding the people through, just the general public through media. And Frank Olson has spent his whole life being buttered up and not given like all of the information, or not quite the correct information about what happened with his father. And as the years have gone on, of course, he's learned more, and he's learned more about the tactics and the behavior of our precious government with their secrecy. And so it really, I mean, I guess he was like super attached to his father. There's a school of thought that talks about reincarnation and how you end up repeatedly over and over in situations with your same people, but you're all different entities each time you reincarnate. So there's another part of that that talks about uh, people that are two parts of one, a twin flame, you would call it. And there's like a whole bunch of information about that that you can find for yourself on YouTube. Rock your search bar. Not even going to try to explain that because I get too dang tangled up in my own digressions to even try to go there. It's a lot. But it would seem that even though that they were father and son, they were so close that they had a deep love for one another. And, were they opposite sexes, then not as parent and child, but just, other people, adults, whatever, they would be lovers. And that part of the school of thought talks about how this is someone you've known over and over in different situations, and, either you were together or on earth at the same time, but not together, and you never knew each other, and you were working your spiritual program apart from each other, which is part of getting back together. And that's about as much about the twin flame as I'm going to even try to explain to you. But they had a closeness that made me think of that. And the man, my God, I mean, he's elderly now, and he wasn't useless in life. He's very well educated. He's very articulate. He's very thoughtful. But he's also just been obsessed with this his whole life, and he has not been able to let go of it, and it has affected his life. And our government does stuff to the public that does this to us all the time. And then they want to hide it. You know, they're always trying to hide something. It's been my whole life that I've been hearing about stuff coming up that had been hidden years before, and then later it finally gets released somehow, and it's like, well, I don't know about you, but I am tired of being jerked around like that. Like, just say it. National security, okay, well, you really got to pare down exactly what that is, because it's not everything. And it's like the hammer thinking everything's a damn nail, whether it is or not. And there's too much of that in our government. There's too much of that in our local and federal, sorry, getting more alerts, local and federal law enforcement. And it's disgusting. And then to even do it, the people that join these forces, it's like a secret society, and they have like the whole other dynamics going on, and they turn it into an us against them situation. And I'm not saying that people don't attack the cops, and I'm not saying that the cops don't attack people. That's just ridiculous. It just can't honestly be said anymore. It's laughable to try and say that what minorities have been saying in forever, and which people have been watching, by the way, since they're, I mean, I can remember being a child and it either was happening or had happened. And this was like, I can remember it in black and white because color TVs hadn't become a thing yet. And it just in my mind, it's a scene of a bunch of black people running, probably on the Pettus Bridge from police, and they got dogs after them, and they're, shooting fire hoses at them and knocking people flying, multiple people from the stream of the hose, and, just running up and beating them. And, it was very clear why the people were on the Raymond Pettus Bridge, okay? They were protesting because they wanted voting rights, equal rights, no more redlining, no more segregated places, and no, it's just like, it's negative, okay? So it's like we've been seeing that. It wasn't like this was particularly galling to me, but I remember, because I'm from LA and I was in LA still at the time, that Rodney King was getting just the crap beat out of him, and all these cops from everywhere like showed up to come take part in this, and they yanked Rodney King out of the car and beat the crap out of him. Yeah, he was buzzo and he should have been driving, but don't even try to tell me that every one of those cops has not done that themselves, okay? They are not at all above reproach. But that was filmed, that was graphic, everybody saw it, no one did anything. But then nobody did much of anything except talk about the Raymond Pettis Bridge, and the level of upsetness, well, that's that's what you're getting. The level of upset created and that has reverberated through the years, and it's only just now, I think, maybe getting to a tipping point. But my God, since 63, we've been able to see this. We've all been able to see the police beating the crap out of people, okay? It's not like anything anyone's making up. Like, you think that was crisis actors on the Raymond Pettis Bridge getting beaten for the cameras? Ridiculous. So, oh, getting a little upset here, a little agitated. It's really not that big of a deal. We're actually here on this planet, I believe, to either act shitty or be shitty and stop. I mean, I think that's the goal. I think we all kind of want to be good. And if we don't, we kind of got like, some bad wiring. And I think there's a lot of that that goes on in agencies that, you know, use the public, like use their bodies, and then lie to them about what they've done, why they're doing it, if they've done it. I mean, it is a terrible dynamic, don't you think? I mean, think about it. That's terrible. We all have the same parts. We don't all have the same stuff. We didn't all come up in the same locations under the same circumstances. Some of us are really well off, and those people don't have to deal with the things that poorer people do, people with less rights, people with less power, people with less money. So in the same way that me and probably anybody that's looked at any of those violent films of racist violence or just violence, it gets in you and it sticks in you and it affects you, and so you get to see this microcosm of all of that, and the man talks about it in great, very well developed, textured detail. His experience, that whole chain of events, it's wow. The things that that we decide to put ourselves through. And here's another one of those school of thought things that I subscribe in. Think about this. How many times have you said yourself or heard it said, I didn't sign up for this, when things get crappy, when things are not going your way? Well, it's so funny because I have this thing that I've been saying for a while about Trump, and basically him and everything about him and everybody around him is opposite world. But because Trump especially, he doesn't tell the truth a lot, and it's so funny. It's kind of like when he's not being truthful, he has tells, okay? So it's just kind of silly, but this is what we got. But so like the reincarnation thing kind of plays into this, like why we're here. Well, why are we here? Well, we're here to experience what we're experiencing, and then I think we're also here to right a lot of cosmic wrongs in a way by getting this stuff right now right, getting right with ourselves, getting right in our heads, getting right with each other. I mean, to put it simply, the difference between being bad and being good. And my God, it's like baby stories. You want to be good, not because you're being told to be good, just because good is good. Good is better. Good doesn't take away from people unless it has a positive, ending point. Your final destination, you want to be good, is, I think, generally understood. And right now we're getting every chance to see just how bad things are and or can be and to put them right. And I just gotta say, I was talking to an American in he was in Dubai, and so we were talking about the protests, and he was asking me what did I think, and I had asked him that as well because I didn't know like what side of things he fell on. Although I'm not really friends, good friends with too many people that would fall on the side of like hate and violence. So we agreed that it was important, and but he did say like, what do you think about like all of the like ugliness and the violence? And I had to say, even when it's ugly, it's kind of beautiful. It's kind of beautiful that we're finally working through this stuff. It's not going to be easy. No one said it was going to be easy. Look how long it took to get to this point. Look back to what I was just saying about what's been on film that I can remember that started from on film, you know, 63 and before that, obviously, and probably other films, but maybe not as widely known as Rodney King or Camera Phone World now. But, we have to, I think, our point of being here is to learn what we can learn from living these negative experiences, no matter what side we happen to land on, as far as our parts we play in those experiences. We're all getting something out of all of it. And so I think that's beautiful. I think that's healing. I think it's amazing. And it's good. It's good because it's been a paranoid time for too long. We've just been kind of living under this heavy, wet, gray cloud cover, and it just is so down dragging of your spirit. So the government did make some feeble attempts to sort of, you know, pay for what they did, or of course, I'm losing my words when I get up here, on here. I lose words. But what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that in their way, they tried to placate, okay, the Olsen family. The mother, well, think of the time. The women were expected to be completely different people than they are today, you know? So all you have to do is, if you watch the show, think about the time that they're showing you these things happening, and like how women behaved, how women were expected to behave, how women expected themselves to behave. I think they were having like a tipping point. Like I think the women's rights movement probably started around that time too. So you had people that then and now that are like, no, we should just stay home and have children and take care of our families and our husbands, and that should be our only roles in life, which that would not have worked for me. It doesn't work for me now. That's why I do not have that life. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not what I want. Um, but I think a lot more women now than then are way more willing to just get out of the house, even if they have to go back and do all of the stuff, even if they're a single person like my mom was. uh you still want to have some satisfaction and feel like you achieved something you're proud of in life. And so there was another tipping point, and then that's still in flux too. So we got to kind of like fix everything together all at the same time, and people are very resistant of that. We have this whole like, there was just a gunfire massacre at a club or a school, but let's not discuss the thing that's at the root of the problem. It doesn't matter who wields the gun. It matters that, yeah, there's guns and somebody has to wield them. And that's kind of more to the point of why people want gun control. It's not that, like, people are against the guns. People are against the people with the guns. Dar. But, a lot of us will edit our thought processes so that salient points like that don't have to be looked at, don't have to be considered. And it seems like that's also changing too. Let me just focus for a moment on the cast and crew of the show. Because, like I said, The actual Olsen family, the surviving members, were in it. It looked like some of the children had to be of either Eric Olsen or his sister or his brother, because they sure looked like, pictures of Eric Olsen when he was a kid, and the family, of course, resembles each other very closely. Uh, okay, but for the fictionalized parts, they had people playing the roles of the scientists that were Frank Olson's colleagues, of the CIA. I'm not even sure what to call them, operatives, I guess. I mean, just as a general term, because they could be doing any number of occupations within the agency. But Peter Sarsgaard, who, this is funny, this is like one of those weird time things again. The man's name is Sarsgaard. COVID-19 is a SARS-like disease. When SARS came out in Asia, Japan, I believe, or Japan and China, where they've been wearing masks for a long time because they're not dumb. They don't want to get infected or infect their fellow people because it would cause their world to shut down, sort of like, sort of like ours has. Yeah. But SARS, okay, it's just funny that, oh yeah, this is what else I was gonna say. When the SARS came out, it was like a big deal. There was a lot of fear of it. It didn't really touch here, okay? Oh, okay. Uh, it didn't really it didn't quite crack our shores the way COVID has. And Peter Sarsgaard was on Saturday Night Live, and they made a lot of jokes about, hi, I'm Peter Sarsgaard, and these are my new SARS guards. Just stupid shit, but I laugh at stupid shit like that. I think it's funny. And we're having a SARS type, virus kind of decimate us right now, the world. Some places have done better than others because of our current leadership and their bizarre obsessive jealousy of the previous POTUS. He's just like, got rid of all the stuff, all of the framework and structure that would have protected us as a whole and helped us get a better handle on this. He doesn't want any. The man just said that if we don't do as much testing, we won't have as many positive tests. That's all that you're going to get, because the testing just tells you if somebody's sick. It doesn't like do anything to prevent the disease from spreading. That's what it does. That's what its biological imperative is to do, to infect. And you have to do stuff to prevent it from decimating your country and your economy and blah blah blah. But I think our economy is way more important, or way more importance is put on it than it deserves, because money is a construct. Checks are basically what, promissory notes, IOUs. It's all like kind of an honor system thing. But the people that want most of it, have most of it, run things that most of it controls the money, they're selfish. They're like, they think they're not also human like the other people that don't have the money, which is ridiculous. Like, there was some Republican congressman that was talking about, oh, I don't know if black people wash their hands. Really? Well, how much food have you eaten that unwashed black hands have prepared, Dingleberry? What a dumb thing to say. But he's just showing his ass, as Linda G says. I've never heard that before, but first time I heard it, it made perfect sense. It's showing he's an ass, that's for sure. Just my opinion, my humble opinion. And I had to rewatch some of Wormwood to just remember what other actors played who. Um, and I don't really need to talk about that. But what I will do is show the cast list, because it has a lot of people that are well known. And what is this man's name? I don't know why this guy keeps popping up in my viewing feed. Tim Blake Nelson is in it as well. And oh man, he's a little creep. Oh, that's why I was watching. Oh my God. Yeah, okay. So I was watching Watchmen, and Tim Blake Nelson is in that too. And that's another thing. I'm going to actually do a separate video on that. But do you know what the first season of the Watchmen TV show on HBO is about? It is about the Oklahoma massacre of the Black Wall Street Green. Oh God, I think it was a green. Oh shoot, let me look it up. Make sure I just get this right. Black Wall Street. Oh, it's in Tulsa. Okay, so Tulsa, which was where they were having a big Juneteenth celebration, and nobody knew Juneteenth was on Juneteenth or what it even meant. And it was just, you know, our president who didn't know. But I'm not going to fault him for not knowing that, because my father's side of the family, which I had, 4 uncles and my dad and an aunt and my grandparents, were from Texas. And I think I think when I first got sick, because I was staying at my house, and their third child, who was actually born to my aunt and not adopted. Too much information, but oh well. Was an adult as well. And so I'm there because I was sick and I couldn't work. And so they were talking about Juneteenth, and I really had never heard, I didn't remember ever hearing it before. And I said, what the heck is Juneteenth? And so they explained it to me, which it was like in Texas. It took 2 years for the slaves in Texas to learn that they weren't slaves, and the slave owners probably knew, and they just didn't tell them. They just kept letting them be slaves. Like they had to send in the military to get them to free those people properly. So that's what Juneteenth was about. It was the day that Texas finally got the word that the black people weren't free. The slaves were free. And so I didn't know that until I was in my 20s, in my mid-20s, okay? So I'm not going to fault him for not knowing that. But I'm also not going to say nobody else knew about it. When don't try to bring everybody else into your ignorance. You didn't know about it. And let me explain something else about Mr. Trump. It's very easy to pick on him and rag on him because he makes appalling mistakes, and he's pretty terrible as a person. At the same time, I have to remember that I also have qualities that he has, and I think everyone probably has some of the qualities of other people that they don't like as well. There's a saying, if there's something about somebody that you really can't stand, it's also something you really can't stand about yourself. But for some reason, you can't say this to yourself. I don't know. I'm pretty good at beating myself up. Mr. Trump, however, he does not do that. He does not play that. He doesn't play in that arena. He just wants to always fake like he's right, even if he's wrong, and he knows it. He'll never admit to it, which I know he probably thinks that makes him look like he's never wrong, but that's all in his head. Just like the nobody ever knew about Juneteenth type thing, also all in his head. So I'm just saying, I try not to get down on him and his personality too much, because there's too much of his bad sides that I can see in myself. So I just try to keep it quiet. And then also, there's no point in fighting with him. He overcompensates in his responses, and it's just not worth it for anyone in the vicinity involved. It's just dumb. Okay, so I was gonna show you the Wormwood cast and crew. Well, just the cast. The crew, while important, are not really pertinent to what I'm talking about right now. I'm almost done, I swear. Hey, where'd it go? Pardon me. So I have some music playing, and it is, oh my God, something about your 7 chakras. Open them, excite them, something like that. but it's a good thing if you can even hear that. And you may also hear some other little sounds, and that's my television going in the background. I'm not monetized. I'm not making money on any of this. But I am letting you know what's happening in the background just to give the proper acknowledgement. Okay, I'm on 40 minutes and I want to stop. So you can do this yourself. You can totally look up Wormwood on IMDb and Netflix yourself. But I'm just going to mention here that once again, Peter Sarsgaard plays Frank Olson, Eric Olson's unfortunately, apparently murdered father by his own colleagues. Uh, there is okay, Bob Balaban is in it. The last thing I remember seeing Bob Balaban, his name in, was when I was watching Gotham. And this was several years ago, and he was like oh, Ra's al Ghul demon type figure or something like that. I guess he was also in the Hurt Locker, which I saw the Hurt Locker a while ago, and the man has been around forever. But a problem I've always had, and I don't know why this is, because like I said, he's been around forever. I've seen him in lots of stuff that I like, and I always have had this disconnect with. I definitely remember the name, come on, but the face I could never put together. And still, I mean, this has been years. But okay, so he's in it. He plays Dr. Lashbrook. Um, Scott Shepard plays Vincent Ruitt, who was, I guess, Olson's boss. He was like a civilian contractor for the army, and the CIA were doing stuff together. Like, they say they don't do that, but they do. And why do they say they don't? Like, what's the big friggin' deal? Just say it. We don't know what you're doing. You make it all secret, and then we're suspicious as hell. Okay, so Balaban plays Dr. Harold Abramson. Sidney Gottlieb, well, he's a heinous little character within the story. He's the guy that doses uh, Frank Olson, and I think probably is the one that infects everyone's mind about his capability of keeping his mouth shut, which is ridiculous because I'm sure he would have been fine. Alice Olson, the wife and mother of Eric, the wife of Frank, the mother of Eric, is played by Molly Parker, who was in Deadwood, one of my favorite shows. Oh my God. That's all I'm going to say. But I like her. Jimmy Simpson, who, well, he's in a lot of stuff. Well, he's in Westworld. That's a big name you'll know. He's got this other show on, I think, Epics with other famous people, and I can't remember the name of it, and that's kind of interesting too. But he's been around for a while too. Uh, I'm just trying to pick out characters who you will see and recognize, and then like they're main characters in the show. And this is a 6 episode uh, limited series. I have to say some final things. Okay, I was gonna actually flash the cast list. Well, I have to do it in a couple of parts because it's kind of long, but there you are. I hope you can see that because where I'm sitting, it doesn't look very clear. Or, like I said, you can look it up yourself. And then here is the other portion that I don't know if you can make out, but I'll just put it up there. Just kind of flesh out what I was talking about. Oh, shoot. I want to be done. I want to be done. Okay, there it is. But look it up. Like I said, IMDb. You can do that yourself. The show had a very, I don't know why, but underwater quality. There's a part where they show, I think it's in the title sequence, where they show, much like Mad Men, Frank Olson falling and falling and falling and falling and falling from the building he was pushed out of or thrown out of or whatever it was. And you know he's in the air. And sometimes you can even see, you know, they're not always able to airbrush or CGI out evidence of the flying harness that people will wear, actors will wear under their clothes when they're supposed to be flying. But they did make him. They didn't make him look underwater like they made Jason Momoa look underwater in Aquaman. But it has for me this underwater, like, when you're underwater, you go slower, sounds are distorted, and it has like those same qualities to me, this show and the story. But it is an epitome of what to be paranoid of, in the term, in the way that just because they're not out to get you doesn't mean they're not there. That's like a, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say it in that quite that way, but still gets my point across. It it gave me a focus to reflect on some of these issues that I feel like we should definitely be paranoid about, in terms of what we know and don't know about our government and their habit of gaslighting, which was there long before 45. And that's it. That is the finale of the Paranoia series, number 5. I do have other stuff in the shoot. It'll be coming right your way. In fact, I'm going to do one right after this about Watchmen, just a short one. Thank you so much for your attention. It was fun. Like, the whole thing was fun. It was a little hard to get through, definitely because of what's going on this side of the screen, not necessarily in my life, but just in the world generally. You know, we all feel this stuff, you know. We may not be as hyper aware of its effect on us, but it does. And I guess that's just the point I wanted to get across. And, you know, you're not crazy for being paranoid. And I guess that's it. Thank you and good night.